It was 1927. Toribio Meija Xesspe, a Peruvian archaeologist, was hiking in the foothills of the Peruvian Desert. When he reached a foothill of the surrounding desert, he was stunned by what he saw. Miles long and miles wide lines cut into the red sand. Animal and human figures, thousands of lines, and surprisingly, what looks like an astronaut decorated the desert floor and surrounding foothills. What exactly were they? And why were they created? In today's video, we have a look at the Nazca Lines. Are the gigantic geoglyphs a message to extraterrestrials or a depiction of constellations in the night sky? Scientists and archaeologists alike have long been puzzled by the massive geoglyphs, speculating as to their origin and purpose. Stay tuned as we examine one of the greatest mysteries of the ancient world, the enigmatic Nazca Lines. Although he has been credited for doing so, Toribio Meija Xesspe did not rediscover the Nazca Lines. In 1553, Pedro Cieza de Leon, a Spanish conqueror and chronicler of Peru, was the first to write about the Nazca Lines. He characterized them as trail markers. In 1569, Luis Monzon recounted having seen ancient ruins in Peru, including what he termed roads. Archaeologist Xesspe is credited with rediscovering the geoglyphs in the modern era and bringing them to the attention of the scientific world. Paul Kozak, an American historian from Long Island University, is recognized as being the first academic to do a comprehensive study of the Nazca Lines. From 1940 to 1941, while investigating ancient irrigation systems in Peru, he noticed that one of the lines was in the form of a bird. Another observation allowed him to detect the convergence of lines on the horizon at the southern hemisphere winter solstice. He started to investigate how the lines may have been created and to figure out their purpose. He was joined by Richard P. Schaedel, an American archaeologist, and Maria Reich, a German mathematician and archaeologist from Peru, in an attempt to understand the significance of the Nazca Lines. They hypothesized that the shapes on the horizon were astronomical marks that showed where the sun and other stars rose on important dates. Why are the lines in this desert so mysterious? Some of you might be asking yourself. The massive scope of this ancient site and the fact that most of the lines and geoglyphs can only be seen from the air has perplexed those studying them for decades. About 250 miles south of Lima, Peru, and not far from the Pacific Ocean, on a desolate plain, spanning 170 square miles, the hard red clay is broken only by a series of unusual furrows. Typically, they penetrate just 6 to 12 inches into the earth, and the majority are not very broad. However, they are extremely long. Some of the lines extend for up to 30 miles, creating enormous parallel lines over the arid landscape. Others swirl like a giant's thumbprint, turning inward, and others seem to lack any recognizable pattern. The lines that lack in pattern is made up for by the expansive depictions of animal and human forms that can only be seen from above. When flying over the Nazca Plain, the desert floor becomes a mural. The earthwork project as a whole is enormous and complex. The area covered by the lines encompasses about 170 square miles, and the largest of these figures may stretch nearly 1,200 feet. There are hundreds of straight lines and geometric forms, and over 70 of them depict animals or humans, among them a hummingbird, a spider, a fish, a condor, a heron, a monkey, a reptile, a dog, a cat, and trees and flowers. The length of some of the characters has been calculated. For example, the hummingbird is 305 feet long, the condor is 440 feet long, the monkey is 305 feet long and 190 feet wide, and the spider is 154 feet long. However, the most puzzling finds at Nazca are the enigmatic mountaintops that curiously resemble modern-day runways. The summits of several of the mountains that surround Nazca give the impression that they were subjected to a tremendous amount of pressure from an external source, which resulted in the leveling of the mountain peaks. According to the findings of several experts, the mystery mountaintops give the appearance of having been perfectly sliced through by something, resulting in the creation of remarkable flat surfaces. Is it conceivable that the ancient runways found in Nazca are in reality navigational markers used by sophisticated extraterrestrials that visited the region thousands of years ago? And is it possible that some of the enormous flat triangles were formed by gigantic spaceships that landed in the area a long time ago? What if, in the distant past, inhabitants of Peru were visited by so-called gods who traveled along these routes? And what if, in celebration of such gods who descended from the heavens, ancient humanity constructed figures such as the Nazca astronaut? This is the hypothesis put forward by proponents of the ancient astronaut theory. It is not surprising that people have looked to the supernatural to explain the symbols found in the basin of the Rio Grande de Nazca River, given the incredible magnitude and level of intricacy of the artwork found there. Some people believe that the indigenous Nazca people, who are credited with drawing the lines some 2,000 years ago, could not possibly have carved the patterns in the earth without having the ability to fly. A common choice for the Nazca helpers are extraterrestrials. Some people believe that the Nazca people constructed the lines themselves, but they did so by instructions given to them by extraterrestrials. These instructions may have instructed them to construct landing pads and runways for extraterrestrial spacecraft, or they may have instructed them to create images that were large enough to be seen from space. It is quite possible that the biomorph known as the astronaut was the impetus for the development of this theory. This biomorph resembles a human being with a swollen head, much like a person wearing a spacesuit. Adding fuel to the extraterrestrial hypothesis are the unusual mummified remains found in the area. The practice of mummification was common among the Nazca people, who lived in the dry regions of the Rio Grande de Nazca River basin from around 100 BCE to 800 CE. Due to this, archaeologists have discovered a multitude of mummies that are extremely well preserved, sometimes in peculiar circumstances. The most striking feature is the unusual and unnatural elongation of the skull that can be seen in some of the mummies. Then there was the enigmatic mummy with 3 fingers that caused a stir in June of 2017, when experts excitedly proclaimed that this newest mummy may not even be human at all. The story made headlines throughout the world. The extraterrestrial influence has largely been discredited, as has the theory that these figures could have only been created by mapping them from the air. Joe Nickell, an academic from the University of Kentucky, was able to recreate the figures by using the same kinds of tools and techniques that were accessible to the Nazca people. When compared to the real lines, his work was considered remarkable in its exactness by National Geographic. Even the largest figures could be recreated in a matter of days by a small team of people using careful planning and simple technology. Maria Reich, also known as the Lady of the Lines for her nearly lifelong work on the Nazca Lines, had another theory on the purpose of the ancient geoglyphs. Kossak and Reich noticed from the outset of their research that some lines converge toward the sunrise on the winter solstice of the southern hemisphere. Reich later discovered an alignment with the summer solstice and argued that some figures correspond to the patterns of constellations. For instance, she saw parallels between the image of the monkey and the Great Dipper. Reich argued, based on these discoveries, that the geoglyphs functioned as an astronomical calendar, showing the departure of certain stars on precise dates, which in turn would mark the crucial agricultural times of the year. Reich added a ceremonial function. The huge size of the figures allowed the gods to view them and pour rain from the heavens. Even now, Reich's idea continues to receive support. Emilia Carolina Sparavigna, a physicist at the Polytechnic University of Turin in Italy, has discovered specific alignments with exceptionally bright stars, including Alkaid and Alioth in the Big Dipper and Vega. She has also confirmed solstice alignments using modern tools and satellite imagery. Maria Reich was right, according to the cases I've studied, she stated. One feature of the animal geoglyphs that has mystified researchers is the inaccuracy of the appendages that they depict. Were these inaccuracies made on purpose? Some researchers think so. Could these anomalies be connected to the stars? This is most evident in the monkey geoglyph. While looking at the monkey's hands, one can see that one hand has 5 fingers, while the other only has 4. The feet only have 3 toes on each foot. When added up, there are 13 toes and fingers. Some researchers believe that these 13 points link up to the star constellation of Ursa Major. The monkey's tail also looks conspicuously like a galaxy of stars. The monkey isn't the only figure that lines up cosmically with the constellation of stars. The condor also has an odd number of toes for an avian species. 9 toes instead of 6 are seen on this geoglyph. The number of points could be linked to the constellation of Aquila. As with the condor, the hummingbird has a configuration that can be linked to a constellation. The hummingbird figure has 11 feathers or points, which can be likened to the constellation of Columba. Yamagata University and IBM Japan announced in 2019 that they had found 143 more geoglyphs on and around the Nazca Pampa. In 2020, a feline-shaped figure was found on a hill. The figure is located on a steep hillside prone to erosion, which explains why it was not identified until researchers thoroughly examined it. In 2022, the number of known Nazca geoglyphs was a staggering 358. Drones are now being employed to aid anthropologists conducting research in the region, and it is predicted that they will be able to uncover many more geoglyphs in the future. Will these newly discovered geoglyphs back up the star constellation theory? The Nazca geoglyph phenomenon cannot be effectively explained by a single theory. Thus, the explanation most likely stems from multiple creations over many centuries by different individuals for a variety of reasons. Are the geoglyphs a signal to extraterrestrial gods, or sacred sites for religious reasons? Are they star maps charting the night sky for agricultural seasons? We will most likely never know due to the passage of time, but one thing is for certain. This awe-inspiring historical site needs to be protected and preserved for future generations. What do you think the Nazca Lines are? Leave us a comment in the comment section.